Well, the days leading up to it, I knew about 4 days prior, I was traveling into Boston, top secret, all this stuff. And for the first time in, I gotta say, a few years, like I am just a wreck. Like I am nervous. I'm feeling every which way possible, anxiety out the window because, there's so much uncertainty. Like I didn't know. I knew I was traveling to Boston. I did not know I was facing Hangman Adam Page. I did not know I was the wild
Wow.
card.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back into iHeartRadio's official wrestling podcast, the Battleground podcast. And man, it is a fun week here on the show. Of course, you've got AEW Beach Break that is this Wednesday night, 8/7 Central on TBS. And of course, you can stream it on Max. And today we have joining us on the show is no stranger to this show. We can consider him a friend because he's been on here multiple times. A lot has changed since the last time he's been on, but let's make some noise for the walking weapon, Josh Alexander, to the show. Yay! So let's just kind of dive right into this. I know you've been making the media rounds, and I know recently you said back in 2019 that you reached out to the Young Bucks about joining AEW, but timing wasn't right. Fast forward 2025. You're now All Elite. How do you feel to be finally a part of AEW after that initial interaction?
I mean, it feels justified, It feels like a full circle moment, but like I don't want people like you see these headlines pop up and people read into this stuff like it was like, you know what I mean? It was a big shutdown and all this stuff. It was like this was like the like before the start of AEW. This is when there was just like murmurs in like alleyways of this thing possibly happening, right? And I just kicked the tires on it. And like in all fairness, when they said not right now, I was like, yeah, I get it. Like I'm a guy that's been locked in Canada basically for 5 years, done some big independents here or there. I need to build my name. And then, I had a few things come along and I ended up choosing TNA at the time. And I built my name up over 6 years there well enough to where now I'm an asset coming in AEW. So like in my old age, I think I'm a little bit wiser and I realize that everything happens for a reason. And, it's all come around the way it should have.
Yeah. And now you're repping that AEW right there on your hat. And it's an awesome thing, especially when we heard the rumors, is Josh going to show up in AEW and all this other stuff. And then perfect timing. It happened for you. And now here we are sitting here thinking about it. The Owen Hart Cup, a tournament with massive legacy. When you think of Canadian wrestling, obviously you talk about Owen Hart. We've had these conversations before. What does it mean for you to represent Canadian wrestling in an event that honors such an icon such as Owen Hart?
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I was the only Canadian in that tournament this year.
Believe so, yeah.
And, it's not something I take lightly. I take a lot of pride in being a Canadian wrestler. And more importantly than that, over the past 20 years, and especially these past like 5 to 10, really kind of, representing the Canadian indie scene and all the wrestlers that come from up here. Because for me, coming up, so difficult to get noticed and all that stuff. So if I can get out there, build my name, and then bring my name back to the Canadian scene, so that it gets some more eyes on the guys, because we have so many talented men and women wrestling here in Canada right now, and we have for decades. It's just for whatever reason it's hard to get noticed. So if I can go out there and represent and do it in the Owen Hart tournament, that's something that means a great deal to me, because I grew up a kid idolizing Brett, Owen, Edge, Christian, all these guys that were on my television when I was a child or a teen. And they say Calgary, Alberta, Canada, I'm like, that guy's like my neighbor, even though it's a 5-hour flight away or whatever it was,
Mm-hmm.
So you've held gold everywhere, all over the globe, literally. What does the initial, like, how does the start of this run maybe feel different from your other runs? Like, do you just kind of have like, maybe there's some momentum behind you, or just like, you kind of feel like it's right around the corner, whatever that goal may be?
Well, when I started, at TNA, I was a relative unknown for, the bulk of wrestling fans throughout the world, unless they'd watched, a little bit of PWG, a little bit of Ring of Honor, where I'd popped up before. Now I think, in the worldwide, scene of pro wrestling, I've built my name up enough to where, I showed up at AEW in that tournament. and there was a hell of a pop on my entrance. So,
Mhm.
people were, I was a recognizable name enough, and now I'm coming in, and I've already established myself. I do have to reintroduce myself to some AEW fans that might not know me, but it's far easier now with all the experience I have, wrestling on television for the past 6 years coming in. So I think I have a leg up on a lot of people in that respect, and being thrown into the mix with a lot of top guys right off the hop, and I'm I'm ready for it. I'm hungry for it, and that's exactly what I want.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that a lot of us fans were not expecting was you aligning with Don Callis, especially after the beginnings of Maple Leaf Pro and everything that took place in that first event. But what was that turning point for you that made the alliance make sense? Okay, maybe I shouldn't have said what I said back then about Don at that thing. Let me align with him now.
You also faced Takeshita at the first MLP event, so lot of kind of head scratching going on.
Well, more than welcome to face Takeshita any day of the week, even now as a member of the Don Callis family, because iron sharpens iron. You're talking about one of the very best in the world.
Yeah.
When it comes to Don, no stranger to Don. We worked together in the past, in TNA and stuff, and he's he's an acquired taste, I'll say that, but he is a genius when it comes to pro wrestling and coming into a new landscape. AEW, a lot of people are already established, a lot of people are already in their groups and stuff like that. I realized that I needed to join forces with some people, to really get ahead, and I think I made the best choice, and I think Don made the best choice because he's the one that came to me and recruited me real fast, and I jumped at the opportunity. It was something I wanted, even coming into AEW. I just never thought it might materialize at all or even this fast.
So is it kind of one of those situations where now that you've been involved with the family to a degree, you kind of get why someone like the god of pro wrestling, Kenny Omega, wants to align with someone like it? Like it's kind of clicking maybe behind the scenes some.
Yeah, you look at the history of what Don's done just in AEW, Kenny Omega, the biggest, best wrestler in the company, in my opinion. And, the list goes down the line. Will Ospreay's been in and out of that group. Kyle Fletcher, to see the transformation he's made over the past, 12 to 18 months
Yeah.
to being now, undeniably one of the very best wrestlers in the company, if not the world. And then we've already talked about Takeshita and everybody else in the group. I think it's just a layout for success. And when you look at, AEW and the stables and groups that are involved in this company, I don't think any of them stack up nearly as well as the Don Callis family against anybody. So
that makes sense. So let's talk Maple Leaf Pro. Congratulations on becoming the new Maple Leaf champion. That is a promotion proudly built on Canadian wrestling and tradition, obviously. How do you plan to balance the responsibility of being their champion while also being attached to a controversial faction like Don Callis? And not to throw this out there, but if there was some sort of interaction where it was the Don Callis family maybe pitted against the Scott D'Amore faction, I mean, is it gonna be one of those head versus heart type things, or like are you just tried and true down the line with Callis?
I mean, that's a real tough question. The battle of head and heart is a really good way to say it, because my head's in the game, with me and AEW, want to find success and stuff, and I know that's going to go through Don. He's going to be integral in my climb in the ranks at AEW. When it comes to MLP, you're talking about the heart of everything I've done for the past 20 years and everything I want to continue to do with my career, and that's, like I said, like prop up the Canadian wrestling scene. I think MLP arriving in Canada is one of the most important things that I've seen happen in my entire career, because, like I said, very difficult for Canadians to get noticed. Now Canadians have a homegrown promotion that is going out there running these, amazing. We sold
Big
out
shows,
Maple Leaf Gardens, like completely insane. I didn't think it was going to happen.
Right.
I knew it would be a big show, but I didn't think you'd be able to get that many people into that building. And, as of the day of at like 1 p.m., in talking to Scott, he was like, there's 80 tickets left on Ticketmaster right now for purchase. And then like maybe an hour later it came up and be like, we're sold out. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the kind of stuff that like gave me goosebumps and got me ready for the show. But to balance it, I hope that we don't have to have, a thing where there's a Scott D'Amore versus Don Callis family or anything like that, because at the end of the day, I'm paying my bills with everything AEW and the Don Callis family, and that's the thing that's going to make me find success. But
yeah,
it will be a tough decision if I have to come to that.
we figured it was a tough question. That's why we asked you. So
Now I want to go back to your debut in AEW, your match against Hangman Page in the Owen Hart Cup. Very intense, closely contested. What was it like stepping into the AEW ring for the first time against somebody like Hangman Adam Page? And how did that set your tone for your tenure here? Because when that music hit and your name comes across the screen, you hear that entire arena erupt.
mm-hmm.
Walk us through all that.
Okay, well, the days leading up to it, I knew about 4 days prior. I was traveling into Boston, top secret, all this stuff. And for the first time in, I gotta say, a few years, like, I am just a wreck. Like, I am nervous. I'm feeling every which way possible, anxiety out the window because, there's so much uncertainty. Like, I didn't know. I knew I was traveling to Boston. I did not know I was facing Hangman Adam Page. I did not know I was the wild card. Like, there was a possibility that it could have been a swerve. You're making assumptions, but like radio silence from everybody. Here's your travel. Here's your hotel.
So it's literally a wild card.
Yeah, exactly.
With everyone involved. Okay, got it.
For me as well. And but like when I found out I was a wild card, when I arrived at the building and they snuck me in and hid me in a room and stuff like that, and I was like, I've already gone through these feelings of these possibilities of what I'm going to be doing. And like, it's just like, okay, I'm stepping foot in the ring with an established main event guy, somebody who I think is the best of the best homegrown champions that AEW has built. Yeah. When you're talking about through the tenure of the 6 years of AEW to be built from a guy that was in the elite, that was kind of, overlooked compared to the Bucks and Kenny Omega, to making this climb and finally, winning the AEW championship and doing all these amazing things, telling these amazing stories with Swerve Strickland and so on and so forth. I'm like, damn, I get to go out there with, one of the best in this company on my debut, and we're going to see if I can hang. And I think I went out there and I hung, and, I didn't pull out the victory, but to lose to somebody like Hangman Adam Page ain't the worst thing in the world, and not a bad way to start. So I was more than happy with it. But the second my music hit, and you've heard wrestlers talk about, are they gonna know me? They're gonna pop and all this stuff. And the greatest of wrestlers have these same feelings. It's like having the dream of your boots not being on and your music's playing. Like it's just this thing that is synonymous throughout all pro wrestling for wrestlers. Yeah. The pop happened, nerves are still there, walked down the ring. The second I stepped through the ropes, I was like, oh, I got this. We're good. All the nerves washed away, and we're right back to business. So
nice. Well, as far as, there's going to be a ton of questions about, fantasy bookings and all this and whatnot. So the question we have around that is just pertaining to AEW talent that you have never faced, never touched, training, nothing. Who are maybe a couple talents you're very eager to get in the ring with in AEW?
Never faced. Top three are Edge, Jericho, and Kenny Omega.
Holy crap. How you just kind of lift off the trifecta there, and it's kind of like, how has none of those three ever happened? Like, that's just
well, it can happen now.
We're talking about Canadian roots and all these things, these interchangeable things, like those three are right at the top for me. And if there's one that I have that's like, I don't want to match with him, I want like a 6-month story and several matches with, that's Swerve Strickland. I think he's one of the best in the business at, telling stories in that ring right now. And I'm itching at the chance to get to face him. So.
Oof. Well, I'm caught me a little off guard. I apologize.
I'm sitting here thinking of the stories that you and Swerve can tell, just because of, we've seen the past stories with you and TNA and Impact, and just thinking of how this could play out between you and Swerve, because you and Swerve are both great storytellers as well as great wrestlers, and you're great on the mic. So just go ahead and, you know what? We'll clip this. We'll send it to Tony and just be like, hey, go ahead and get this started. I don't know when, but maybe next Wednesday after beach break, we can get this started. Please, Tony.
I mean, you're rushing things. I'm cool waiting a little bit.
Yeah.
I can establish myself over the next 6 to 12 months. And when we're ready, when it's going to pop off, it's going to be even better. So let's not rush. Nothing good comes fast. All right.
No, that's true.
That is very true. Well, I know time is sensitive here because you've got some other things to do. So before we let you go, we always like to have a little fun at the end of these shows. And if we were to look at Josh's workout playlist. Let's say we're scrolling through, right? And all of a sudden we're like, didn't know that Josh lifts weights to this song. What is that song that's on your playlist that we're going to be like, that's interesting?
Oh man, I lift to like all sorts of music.
Well, let's do the one that would ruin your tough guy image.
The name of the artist is skipping my mind, but Hard to Love. It's a country song. Really pops on every once in a while there. I'm a real sucker.
Is that Lee Bryce?
Yeah, that's Lee Bryce.
It's Lee Bryce. I'm
not
sucker
even the country
for some romantic country every once in a while.
Yeah,
so.
man. Some of the ballads in country or some.
Could you just imagine, like, you look over and Josh is like got like 400 pounds and he's just benching, and all of a sudden he's just like jamming out to Lee Bryce, Hard to Love.
Yeah, or Lee Combs or just something, yeah. That's what we like that. We talked to somebody recently who was also Canadian, and they also liked country, and it just, it's a global thing now, but we're from Tennessee, so it's just kind of strange.
Second nature to us.
People hear this stuff. So.
My father was a country artist his entire life before he passed away, so I kind of grew up living on country music. And although I didn't appreciate it in my teens, in my adulthood, I really do appreciate a good country song. So.
That's awesome, man.
I understand that. Well, Josh, we just want to say thank you for taking the time out and hanging out with us and talking to us. Again, it's good to catch up with you. I know, like we said at the beginning, a lot of things have changed since the last time we spoke, and we're super pumped to see you in AEW. Super excited to see that Josh Alexander is all elite. And before we let you go, is there anything you want to say to people that are watching or listening to this right now?
I mean, check out Beach Break this Wednesday. Double or Nothing's coming up May 25th. And, just keep watching the Don Callis family on AEW, and we'll give you some good stuff.